A month after their marriage, Nastya discovered she was pregnant, bringing immense joy to her and her husband as they prepared for their first child. They set up a small room, complete with a wardrobe and a crib, and purchased clothes and toys to welcome their son. The couple envisioned having more children, aligning with the village's tradition of large families. When Nastya went into labor, Alex intended to drive her to the hospital but faced car trouble. Fearing for his wife's well-being, he called an ambulance. Unfortunately, the ambulance arrived late, and by then, Nastya had collapsed, with Alex by her side, trying to comfort her. Once at the hospital, Nastya was quickly transferred to the maternity ward, where doctors determined she would need a cesarean section due to complications. This news heightened Alex's anxiety as he awaited news of his wife's condition. 5 hours after the operation, the doctor emerged with a somber expression and delivered devastating news to Alexei. His beloved wife had passed away during the surgery, but their baby boy had miraculously survived. Overwhelmed with grief, Alexei screamed in anguish, unable to comprehend the sudden loss of his wife and the new life of his son. Struggling to accept the situation, Alexei initially refused to see his son, viewing him as the tragic outcome of his wife's death. However, the nurses gently encouraged him to reconsider, emphasizing the baby's need for care and support. Despite his emotional turmoil, Alexei relented, understanding that the infant required his attention. Concerned for Alexei's mental state, the doctor decided it was best not to immediately give him the baby, fearing he might unintentionally harm him. Instead, he advised Alexei to return home and come back in a week to collect his son. Overwhelmed by grief, Alexei could not fathom the idea of taking his son home when the hospital staff contacted him to collect the child. He expressed his desire not to see his son and suggested getting rid of him. Upon learning of her grandson's distressing situation, Nastya's grandmother, Natasha Ivanova, intervened. She took the baby to her home, providing him with care and everything he needed. Despite Natasha's efforts to contact Alexei and encourage him to be involved in his son's life, he remained unresponsive and indifferent. Ignoring pleas from both Natasha and the hospital staff, Alexei refused to acknowledge his child. After 6 months passed without any sign of Alexei, Natasha continued to care for the baby as her own. Determined to reunite the father and son, Natasha sought out Alexei, only to learn from a neighbor that he often frequented a spot by the railroad tracks near the woods, where he would sit and drink. Upon arriving at the railroad tracks, Natasha found Alexei sitting on the railing, intoxicated and holding a bottle of wine. His state of inebriation only added to the complexity of the situation, leaving Natasha uncertain of how to proceed. As the grandmother tried to engage with Alexei, he remained unresponsive, almost unconscious, and refused to speak. Even when she placed his child on his chest, he showed no interest. Disheartened, the grandmother decided to leave, but a sudden incident caught her attention. She noticed a teddy bear stuck on the train tracks, with a train rapidly approaching. Acting quickly, she set her grandson down and ran to rescue the toy just in time, narrowly avoiding being hit by the train. Although frightened, she was relieved to have saved the teddy bear. Shortly after, a large bear appeared, likely the mother of the small animal. As the bear approached, the grandmother left the teddy bear behind, scooped up her grandson, and hastily retreated from the area, fearing an attack from the wild animal. As she walked away, the bear and her cub followed, but without any aggressive behavior. Perplexed by their actions, the grandmother kept moving, wary of a potential threat but relieved that the bears did not pursue her with hostile intent. Grandma thought the bears might want to express gratitude for her actions, but they seemed unable to find a way to do so. The mother bear and her cub began visiting Grandma's house regularly, sitting outside for a while before leaving. Over time, Natasha realized that the bears were peaceful and seemed to seek friendship with her. Feeling a connection with the animals, Natasha started offering them food and water. She approached them gently, and soon, even her grandsons joined in, playing with the young bear cub. One day, Alexei, the baby's father, visited Natasha and expressed his desire to take his child back, as he planned to remarry and start anew. Although sad to part with her grandson, Natasha was pleased that Alexei was ready to take responsibility. She handed over the baby along with clothes and other necessities, bidding him farewell with tears in her eyes. Natasha continued to visit her grandson regularly and was delighted to see Alexei taking good care of him. Alexei had also met a young woman named Olga, and they planned to marry. Days passed without the bears visiting, leading Natasha to believe they had moved on. However, one day, as Natasha sat in her yard, she saw the bears approaching the house, smiling. The bond between them remained, a silent testament to the unexpected connections that life can bring. The sheep eagerly awaited Grandma's arrival, and as she approached, she noticed the mother bear carrying something in her mouth. To her astonishment, it was a little boy, her grandson, whom she had left days ago with his father. The child was calm but exhausted. The bear gently placed him on the ground, and Grandma, after reassuring herself about her grandson's condition, picked him up and took him into the house. Shocked by what had happened, Grandma immediately went to the police to report the incident. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Alexei, the boy's father, had suddenly remembered his ex-wife while drunk. He then carried his son to the railway and placed him on the tracks before passing out from alcohol consumption. As fate would have it, the express train was approaching when the bear intervened. The bear threw the boy to safety at the last moment and then took him to Grandma's house, leaving Alexei asleep by the tracks. The bear had returned the favor to Grandma for saving her son months ago, this time saving her grandson from certain death due to his father's negligence. The police warned Alexei that if his son was neglected in the future, custody would be taken away from him. Regretful of his actions, Alexei promised that it would never happen again. He swiftly married his girlfriend Olga, and together they devoted themselves to caring for the little boy. Alexei made the decision to quit drinking alcohol entirely, focusing all his attention on his son, who grew to be deeply loved and attached to him. Meanwhile, the bear and her cub continued to visit Grandma Natasha Ivanova's house, with the bear spending most of her time there.